What is up, YouTube? Jason here. And today I have for you, I'm going to read a passage from Hunter Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, right? A chapter about the momentum and the beauty of counterculture in the 1960s, but then the eventual decline of it and disillusionment that eventually took hold, I guess, in the 70s and 80s. And it's also a passage in a broader sense that may allude to the death of the American dream. Okay. About how America was once, and I mean, you can argue this from it, obviously depending on who you are, uh, ethnically, culturally. Was America really great for you? That's why Donald Trump's slogan is so troublesome. Make America great again. Well, make America great again for who? But nonetheless, that's not about him. What I'm saying is, if the American dream was once alive, who had access to the path of it, to the vitality that it may provide, and to the benefits it may provide? Who had access to such a dream? Who was allowed to dream, and whose dreams were vexed to nightmare? Right. Anyway, nonetheless, I think it's a beautiful passage. Before I read authors, before I got into reading Dostoevsky, before I was introduced to James Joyce in modernism, and before I took postmodernism and read Solomon Rushdie, and before I read T.S. Eliot, before I read Virginia Woolf, before I read Terry Tempest Williams or Neil Hurston, Langston Hughes, before I read all these different authors, and before I believe I even chose to study literature in college, I was interested in Hunter Thompson. I read a bit of Hunter Thompson. Now, have I finished Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas? No, I have not. But like most people, a prelude to his writing is his drug fueled, chaotic antics, right? His shooting guns with Johnny Depp, his apparent drug routine that was read on the Joe Rogan podcast. Um, Waking up. I can't recite the routine, but, Chivas in the morning, Dunhills, smoking cigarettes, cocaine, eventually start snorting cocaine seriously, more cigarettes, more Chivas, and, 3 p.m., drop acid. And then after all of this, smoke reefer to take the edge off. After snorting a mountain of cocaine. He's like Scarface at the end of Scarface, where Tony Montana's sitting at his desk and there's just a mountain, the peak of Kilimanjaro of cocaine, equating to a mountain of cocaine is just before Hunter Thompson. And he's burying his face, and then he's, using a typewriter to write great literature. And so that was very captivating and interests me. The drug certainly influenced his writing and his outlook on society, but it was not everything. The enigma of Hunter Thompson still exists today, and is still just as interesting and captivating, as I said, as I feel like as it was perhaps when he was, out on the road writing about the Kentucky Derby and pioneering a movement called gonzo journalism, where he sort of infused himself into the stories he was reporting on. right? He goes to the Kentucky Derby, and he doesn't write about the race itself necessarily, or the jockeys, the sponsors, but the whole spectacle of the spectators, people throwing up on themselves, ritzy people, poor people, middle class. They're all there, and they're all drinking until sundown, drinking their lights out, and just crying, laughing, and everything in between. So yeah, he claimed to go to the Kentucky Derby to watch, and that was like watching the real show, right? And that's very much true. You go to a baseball game. I go to a baseball. I'm not even one into sports, but you go to a game. It's not just about the action on the field. Maybe for some true baseball enthusiasts, sports enthusiasts, it is, or maybe people who have $20 down on the fucking game, on their team winning. But otherwise, you go to drink and maybe drink, but mingle with the crowd and be a part of something that's bigger than yourself. And Hunter Thompson very much not only recognized this, but capitalized on it, and did so in a beautifully terrifying way, I guess. It just really just great writing from the guy. But to get into the passage, right? And one more thing, as we know, Hunter Thompson, like many other troubled artists, he ended up committing suicide, I believe, somewhere in his 60s. And I think it was while he had family in his home or in his cabin or something like that. And he shot himself, I believe he was in a great deal of pain and only saw himself declining. So he ended up taking matters into his own hands. And, as an artist, that can, for many artists, that can kind of be like their final act, Everything is a performance, including life itself and death itself. One moment. What? In a bit. I'm reading. Sorry about that. Just give me a minute. Just give me a moment. My grandmother can't hear. Okay, so, God, I'm going to keep going because this is my second take on this video, so we're just going to keep shooting through, right? Of course, she has to, that's fine. I love my grandma, so. So here we go. My central memory of that time seems to hang on 1 or 5 or maybe 40 nights or very early mornings when I left the Phillimore, half crazy, and instead of going home, aimed the big 650 Lightning across the Bay Bridge at 100 miles an hour, wearing LL Bean shorts and a sheepheader's jacket, booming through the Treasure Island Tunnel at the lights of Oakland and Berkeley and Richmond, not quite sure which turnoff to take when I got home to the other end, always stalling at the toll gate, too twisted to find neutral while I fumbled for change, but being absolutely certain that no matter which way I went, I would come to a place where people were just as high and wild as I was. No doubt at all about that. There was madness in any direction at any hour, if not across the bay, then up the Golden Gate or down the 101 to Los Altos or Los Honda. You could strike sparks anywhere. There was a fantastic universal sense that whatever we were doing was right, that we were winning. And that, I think, was the handle, that sense of inevitable victory over the forces of old and evil. Not in any mean or military sense. We didn't need that. Our energy would simply prevail. There was no point in fighting, our side or theirs. We had all the momentum. We were riding the crest of a high and beautiful wave. So now, less than 5 years later, you can go up on a steep hill in Las Vegas and look west. And with the right kind of eyes, you can almost see the high water mark, that place where the wave finally broke and rolled back. Okay, so especially that last paragraph, you can see the high water mark with the right set of eyes. The place where the wave finally broke and rolled back. What is this wave? What is this beautiful wave that people were riding, during this time? Well, it is the counterculture of the 1960s. It is social reform. It is, people taking acid and perhaps smoking reefer, listening to good music, but also envisioning a different kind of living and a different kind of America. Social awareness was present during this time and came into the American consciousness. Things like LGBTQ rights, awareness of racism and what it meant to be black or African American in the United States. Of course, you have Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., marching during this time, and I believe giving his "I Have a Dream" speech during this time. Where it is that not the content of your character, or not the color of your skin, but the content of your character, which should be like the basis upon which people judge you. And environmental issues, coming into the societal consciousness. And I guess, it was a beautiful time to be alive. Hunter Thompson talks about it's hard to really put into words what it meant to be alive during this time, but all that you knew was that you were at the spearhead of something, of this great force of momentum, and it just felt right. That's the way he describes it. Timothy Leary, a once coveted, prestigious professor, I believe, a professor at perhaps Harvard. I'm not sure where else. He leaves this life and to drop acid, I guess, and to join the countercultural revolution. And his slogan, "Turn on, tune in, and drop out," is heard across the country. And if people like him, once a part of the bureaucracy, if people like him can have this sort of revelation and begin to join the spearhead of this movement, then really what is holding others back? And so many people join in this countercultural revolution. And it's a feeling of to be on the right side of history, I guess, during this time. But then, of course, there is eventual disillusionment and a point where the wave crashes. And there is a conservative backlash. Ronald Reagan takes office, I guess. Hunter Thompson was a big critic of Reagan's. And I think he wrote a book about following him on the campaign trail. And, he's viewed as a greedy, money-hungry, just conservative, what would you say? I don't know. Whatever adjective you want to use to describe the guy. But yes, this slime ball, I guess, this grease ball, just that does not have America's best interest in mind, but rather himself and his probably cohorts, his cronies, right? Um, and conservative backlash and traditional values take the place of the '60s counterculture, and progression, whatever progression in society looks like, and perhaps that's not even a real thing. I remember talking to a guy at a bookstore, in Frostburg. When I went, I made a video on it, and he said, "Is progress?" I talked about progress not being linear, societal progress, that is, not being a linear thing, but you have upticks and downward spirals, and it's not necessarily just like a constant forward progression. And he said, "Well, is progress even a real thing? What does progress even look like?" But you can certainly survey people and look at the quality of life, and see whether people are happier in a given time frame than others, and what their quality of life looks like, what the GDP looks like, etc., etc. But to really quantify progress is impossible. So I think he's right there. You can't quantify something like happiness. You can't quantify something like progress, even if science or modern science wishes to, or whomever wishes to. It's just sort of, it's impossible, because human desire is, it's a broad spectrum. No one person, of course, is the same, and people don't always want progress, right? Some people want regression. People want us to regress. They want chaos and mayhem to ensue, and some people are happiest when the world is burning, because at least they're not the only person on fire. At that given moment. And that's very much true. So concepts of good and evil, and right and wrong, and happiness and sadness and negativity are sometimes flipped on their heads. And people, whether they realize it or not, sometimes seek out sadness for whatever reason. But I just wanted to read that passage because I think it's a beautiful passage. I think it would have been a beautiful time to to be alive. The '60s always sort of, captivated me. And especially people like Timothy Leary, people like Hunter Thompson, that were these, celebrated, somewhat decorated, people at the head of their field, but they were right there, a part of the counterculture. They were right there, dropping acid with the masses, and living in the moment, and the forces that came to be to give birth to the counterculture, I guess. You have. And to cite somebody like W.B. Yeats, who views history as a 2,000-year span, perhaps, if we subtract that and don't look at it, if we take Yeats' formula and just decrease the amount of decades or centuries that follows the spirit of an age, right? Or which there's a changing of the spirit of an age, and you look at it across maybe a single decade or two decades, 20 years. You have the Cold War, and the World War II, and then psychological warfare and the Cold War and espionage, and then people are sort of sick of it. And why are we trying to destroy one another? Also, anti-war. Feminism is also on the rise during the 1960s. And and people like Hunter Thompson are born. And they view all this pain and trauma of the past, and so to rebel against that, they smoke some reefer, and they talk about all the chaos that once was, and the new collective that is, that now is. So yeah, it's a beautiful passage. I'm just rambling now. Hopefully I covered that a bit. Why Las Vegas? Why is well, the story is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but Las Vegas is also a hub for sin, and I guess you could imagine something of an embodiment of counterculture, right? Where do you go if you want to sin? Well, you go to Las Vegas. If you want to indulge in some type of hedonistic pleasure, well, where better to go than the city of sin? Las Vegas, you can gamble, you can drink, you can solicit a prostitute, or pay for sex, whatever the case may be. So it makes sense that Las Vegas is where you can see the wave, or the high water mark, where the wave eventually crashed. Just it sounds like what a time to be alive. Chaos in every direction you look. People as high as you, but also people walking with a sense of purpose. Even though these people are out of their minds, there is a sort of a collective vision or a collective sense of purpose felt among the population, among the activists and people, who make up the counterculture. So yeah, I certainly need to read the rest of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I read most of it. I think I about finished it, at least like an audio version of it on Audible, but I've never actually sat down and read it. I'm gonna keep working my way. One second. Through Crime and Punishment. Raskolnikov just got interviewed by Petrovich Porfiri, and it seems like Porfiri played Raskolnikov like a fiddle, but I'm not going to get into that. I sort of want to make a separate video on that, on the cross-examination of Raskolnikov, and how Porfiri sets these psychological snares for Raskolnikov to wander in himself. And maybe it's Raskolnikov really, by giving him distance, by Porfiri allowing Raskolnikov some distance, Raskolnikov really sets, the snares around himself. He's the constructor of, the noose, and willingly, upon stumbling into Porfiri's office, slips his neck into his own noose that he made himself. Anyway, I don't mean to digress, but hopefully you enjoyed that, and more videos on Crime and Punishment and on whatever I decide to come. So thank you guys.